In Dungeons & Dragons, there are times when a character needs to make a roll of some kind, but the Dungeon Master doesn't want the player of that character to know the result. You've been there before, you know what I'm talking about. Because sometimes if the player doesn't know the result of the die they just rolled, it can increase roleplay, increase the tension in that moment, and avoid metagaming situations. What about an insight check to see if an NPC is lying or not? If they roll a nat 20, well, now that player becomes a human lie detector and has total confidence in whatever the DM says next. What about investigation or perception check of a nat 1? Now that character would not know that there was something for them to find, but the player knows the roll was bad, which means they now know that there was something there for them to find, but they just didn't see it. Do you see the issue there? I'm going to break down these issues and give you 4 different solutions because I have the secret answer that's called secret rolls. Now let's roll it. Welcome to the Dungeon Coach. I'm the Dungeon Coach. I'm going to help lower that DC in your game by increasing the mystery and suspense of those secret rolls. Now, I am not talking about the DM secretly rolling behind the screen, but what we are talking about are advantages to when your players don't know the result of their own roll and 4 different ways to make it happen. In this video, I'm going to give multiple examples of these bad situations and answer the debate on if a DM should ever roll the dice for a player or not. And I'll finish up with those 4 secret roll methods to help increase roleplay, increase tension, and decrease metagaming at your table. Because that's what I'm all about here on this channel, giving you guys creative options to take your game to the next level. And if that's something that you're interested in, then hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out. I post videos every Saturday. I keep trying to give you guys better and better stuff. So let's get into it. So the DM asks a player to make a perception check, and they roll a 3. Now this is an issue. That character looks around and doesn't notice anything, but the player knows there was something there because they were asked to make a check. But I as a DM want to avoid putting my players in metagaming situations whenever possible. Here's the problem for both really good and really bad rolls. On a nat 20, you see all the things. When the players see this, they feel totally safe, they have all the information, and there's no more mystery, no more tension. And even these really high rolls bring in extra metagaming information, that there's nothing else there that matters, or else the DM would have said it. And the opposite's true for a nat 1. You now know that there was something there that you did not see, but you should not know that because your character doesn't know that they didn't see what they didn't see. Do you see where I'm going with this? See? Man, I'm on a roll, a secret roll. But there's more problems. If the nat 20 player says they want to cautiously move around because it seems too quiet, that would be viewed as good role play. But if the nat 1 player does the exact same thing and proceeds with caution, even though they rolled low, that would be viewed as metagaming. They're trying to take advantage of the system and still proceed with caution and try and get more rolls out of the DM. But that sucks because both of those players could be role-playing that same character who's just a cautious person. Now, I know how to handle metagaming as a DM, and I could do a whole video on that, but I want to avoid putting my players in this situation in the first place. So what if the result of the roll the player makes is a secret to them? A secret roll. Then they'd have no idea what the result was, they would listen to what the DM says, and then proceed to roleplay. And now they, just like their character that they're playing, are synced up. Time out. Matt Mercer does this sync up in another way of doing secret whispers. Now, of course I do this too, although I don't know how it would work nowadays. Maybe we'd use a cup on a string or something. Whenever there's a time at your table where only one player would know a piece of information that has a high surprise factor, I would only whisper it to that player. I would let them decide on how to reveal that information to the group. Because that feels way better than telling all the other players at the table.
Yeah, so everything I just said, you don't know that, so don't act on that information.
That feels bad. And I have had great players who never metagame, but it's not about that. I want my players' knowledge to be synced up with their character's knowledge. It leads to far greater moments of these big reveals because when their character's surprised, they are also surprised as the person. Whew, okay. Another example that really got me early on in my DMing is insight checks. If a player rolls a nat 20 on an insight check, now they feel like a magic human lie detector, and whatever the next thing the DM says is divine truth, and they trust it absolutely. They stop immersing themselves in the world and thinking critically about that NPC, because now that player knows that they can trust what the DM just said, and all of that is outside the game information. And even if your players don't act on that outside of the game information, that still is not the experience that I want to give my players. Now, I'm not saying make every single insight check a secret roll, but when there's times at the table when you want that suspense to stay there, use a secret roll. Because wouldn't it be awesome if they make a roll, but only the DM knows the result? Now they have to listen and think critically to what the DM just says and evaluate on if they trust that person or not. They'd have to think for themselves and their character to role play what they feel about that information. And this doesn't mess with the mechanics of the game either, because people with high insights would be right more often and have confidence in what they just heard. Or a character I've made before was really gullible and had disadvantage in all insight checks, but was still very confident about what he thought. But I would say it's better for your players to have confidence in their role play of what they hear instead of confidence from the dice they just saw. And back to the point of metagaming, I think it would feel bad for a player to roleplay an untrusting character after getting a low insight check. You roll a 4 and the DM says he seems fine or whatever, but you still are untrusting. Now that's metagaming. No, that's just him role-playing his paranoid character. Do you see the problem here? The same thing can happen with failed investigation and perception checks like we talked about earlier. I want to start using more comments from you guys in my videos, so I made a community post about these secret roles. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss them and get your comment in some videos. Comment from Rebel Vampire says, I can see the appeal, but I love dramatic irony too much. And then they go into the scenario where you have the character that says, I'm gonna look for traps, and then they roll a 3. And in character they say, guys, there's definitely 0 traps here. Then they all walk forward confident in this knowledge, and then a trap triggers. And I gotta say that using this system makes that scenario even better. Props to that player for good role playing, but what if they did not know the result of that trap check? They would still get that 3, but not know that they did, and still do their awesome confident character role play, and the group would pass on through right on into a trap. The entire group would have a more tense moment, leading right into a funny moment when the player confidently triggers all the traps. Or a different character in that same situation could proceed cautiously. Not knowing allows the players to roleplay how their character would actually handle that situation without the corruption of metagaming knowledge. And I hope you understand that that's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about players metagaming with the knowledge they have. I'm just talking about them having it in their heads at all, and that unsyncs them from their character. So some of the different roles I could see using secret roles for, and let me know if I missed any down in the comments, but perception, insight, investigation, checking for traps. I also have a really cool example of something that I'll show you at the very end of the video. But you could also use them for death saving throws. I mentioned this already in my homebrew death rules video. Now I have tried out this homebrew rule, and it really does increase the tension and suspense of those death saving throws when the DM rolls them behind his own screen. The players not knowing the result of that saving throw really makes them scramble, and this is what I'm talking about with those unknown rolls adding to the mystery and suspense, with players freaking out not knowing how close their ally is to living or dying. But I personally do not use this system, and I have a different approach to death that you can check out in that video if you want. The biggest thing that's always bothered me with this though is the DM rolling the dice for the players. This just feels awful to me. I will never make a roll for the player because I feel like this sabotages the core of the game. The dice are what connect you to your character, and I would never want to get in between that. Especially if I was to make a roll for them and have something terrible happen and, God forbid, kill their character. So all 4 of these secret roll methods I'm going to give you guys involves the players rolling and not the DM. Time out. As you can tell, I get really passionate about this stuff. But you know what else I'm passionate about? My patrons and YouTube members. You like that segue there? But for real, I have so many people that support me and help me be able to do this passion of mine. We just hit a big goal, and I have even more goals to unlock more stuff for the channel for both everybody and my supporters. And I'm about to update all the reward tiers, so get in now before I change it up. Back to it. I hope you see the difference here, because when you make an attack roll and it misses, you as the player know that it missed, and your character know that it missed. They just saw their sword swing and miss. But your character can't see it fail at not seeing something. Okay, I think you get it. What I'm trying to do here is give you guys a lot of ideas of when you can use these secret rolls and multiple ways that you can implement them to your table. Final disclaimer here is not to overuse this like I warned you about earlier. Only pick those moments that you want to keep that mystery, suspense, or tension high. If you do this all the time, not only would it start to get annoying and slow down your game maybe, but it'd become less unique. So if the player can't know the result of their roll and the DM's not allowed to roll it, then what can you do? These methods are in order from least complicated to most complicated, and comment down below which one you like the best, or if you have another one that you came up with yourself. And the last 2 methods here both work in person and online. Secret roll number 1. This one's the easiest method of all. They just walk over and roll their dice behind your screen. No peeking, and you get to see the result as the DM and then just hand it back to them. All you would need now is just to ask them what their modifier is for the roll that you just asked for, and you're done. You know the result, and they have no idea. You can even make a weird face if you want. secret role number 2. In that same community thread, Temujin and David use a bowl of doom. Now I have a Tower of Doom, but that's a whole different video. But I might call this the bowl of mystery, since it's not always a negative effect or life or death at stake. I love this idea, and all you have to do is have a bowl, hold it out above your player's eye line, they roll in it and they have no idea what it was. And it saves the player from having to get up. But now you have to get up as the DM. Never mind, this one's awful. Now these next 2 methods require a little bit of preparation, but they can be totally worth it. And they can be used both online and in person. Secret role number 3. Ask for the relevant modifiers that you want to make secret rolls for before the game starts. Or what I do is ominously ask them to look at their character sheet and write a few things down on an index card without them seeing. Really gets in their heads. So now that you have these modifiers you want, you can ask them to just roll a d20. Now here's my cool example on when you can use this. Intelligence saving throws to determine if something is an illusion or not. It would be totally obvious if players were talking to somebody and asked everybody to make an intelligence saving throw or an investigation check. This would break their immersion. And again, I don't care how good my players are at not metagaming. I want them to be surprised whenever they find out that they were talking to an illusion this whole time. Instead of them hearing about that check and becoming suspicious, I want to roleplay that character or give them clues of what's going on to make them think critically and then be suspicious because of that. I did this at my table and I had all their modifiers, asked everybody to roll a d20, and I knew who failed or not. But nobody else knew what they even rolled for. Only one of the players succeeded on that roll, so I got up and whispered to him that something about this person's image seems a bit off. Now that one player has information that the others don't, and it was really cool to see how they roleplay versus this high-powered NPC to try and tell their party without him knowing. This can also be done for spells being cast on a party or a poison secretly working in their system. Let me know what methods you might use this for down in the comments, because this really gets your players going and wondering what's happening. But again, use this method sparingly. Secret role number 4. Once you get this set up, this may be the best method and something I have definitely used. Each of your players gets an index card before the session with numbers 1 through 10 next to it. Each of them roll a d20 and fill in each of those 10 blank spots. All the players hand the card back to the DM, and now that's their secret roll card. So now when you need a player to make one of those secret rolls, you just ask them to roll a d10. You look at their chart to see what that matches up to, and that's what their d20 roll is. Now a couple of tips for this so you can really customize it to how you want. Change up the order that they rolled in so they don't know which rolls are where. I gave each of my players their own card to fill out, but I had a master secret roll card with a grid of numbers and their names for which one matched up. Once each player handed their card back to me, I randomly wrote the numbers down across all 10 spots. This really helps to make sure your players have no idea. I'm on to you, sneaky players. Can't get me. I also like to make sure this chart is somewhat balanced. So look at the numbers, and if they have a ton of high rolls or a ton of low rolls, ask them to maybe re-roll some of them. Once you feel like it's a solid spread, you're good to go. And I personally have my players re-roll nat 1s and nat 20s because for those 10 values that I have on the card, I only make them roll for 8 of them. I fill in those other 2 blank spots with a nat 1 and a nat 20. That's just more fun to me, and it makes secret rolls more dynamic. Then I just make sure to scramble them all up. And you could also do this with smaller dice of a d8 or a d6. So here's how it works. Let's say Paul wants to check for a trap. I ask him to make a secret roll, and he rolls a d10 and gets the result of 7. I see that the result is a 15, and I ask Paul what his investigation trap check modifier is. And there you go. I now know the result, and he doesn't, so then I describe what he finds or doesn't find. And my last tip here is I will scratch through that 15 once that 7 is rolled. Because let's say I ask Paul to make a roll again and he rolls a 7 again. Now he might know based on the past experience if that 7 was a good or bad roll. So I just skip the 7th spot and use the next one on the list to see what 8 has. You can have your players refill this card over time, but I had a D10 secret roll card that lasted an entire 3-year campaign. I never needed to refill it, so that should also show you the frequency of how you should not abuse this system too much. Unless that's the type of mysterious game you're running. Now guys, I want to give a huge shout out to another RPG YouTuber, Seth Skowarski. He has the only other video on YouTube about secret rolls, and I watched his video over 2 years ago, and it has led to all the methods that I do now. He does a great job at explaining this topic and many others, and the system he uses in this video is very similar to my tip 4, but a little different. So go check him out because he has some great stuff for all RPGs. And now for overtime, I'm going to show you a top secret picture. One of the extremely generous people in this community, known as a DC Artificer, has been artificering some stuff for this channel. All I can show you right now is this picture, but it'll all be revealed in this next live stream at this date, 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. And remember, friends make secrets and secrets make friends. That's how that goes, right? If you want to see some of the other homebrew systems I've already made, then I got a playlist for you right here. And if you want to stay up to date on all future videos, hit the subscribe button right here. And if you really like the stuff I'm doing and want to support this channel to unlock even more, Patreon's right here. So until next time, stay creative and think outside that box. Peace.